Good afternoon. If everybody would please get seated. I'm Nancy Bagranoff, the Dean of the Robbins School of Business, and we're so pleased that you could join us this evening for our last event in our Executive Speaker Series this year. Tonight we're going to hear from Ruth McCartney, and I can tell you you're in for a really great time. Last summer I was in Denver at the American Accounting Association annual meeting, and accountants really do have good taste in speakers. We had a fabulous keynote speaker, Ruth McCartney, and the minute she went off the stage, I said, oh my gosh, we have got to get her and bring her to Richmond. But I didn't know. I thought, would she do it? Would she do it? And she graciously agreed to. So here she is tonight, and you're going to have a great time. To introduce Ruth McCartney tonight, we have Caitlin Harmon. We like to have our students introduce our speakers. And Caitlin is a graduating senior. She's going to work for Baker Tilly. She is the president of the Microfinance Club, and she also has, she's majored in international business. Well, she's majored in business with an international business concentration. She really impressed me. I was talking to her the other evening at an event that we had, a Benefit for Hope. And Caitlin was talking about her international experience at Richmond. As you know, this is a focus point for us in the Robbins School. She has lived and worked in Spain, Peru, the Dominican Republic, and she's going to be on a mission in Africa this summer. So just a typical student at the University of Richmond. So at any rate, Caitlin, if you would please come and introduce our speaker. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Caitlin Harmon, and it is my privilege to introduce you to tonight's speaker. Ruth McCartney, the half-sister of Paul McCartney, is an accomplished musician in her own right, having begun her study of music and dance in Liverpool at the age of 4. Her fans are global, as are her active philanthropic efforts in breast cancer research and support for children and earthquake victims. Ruth McCartney is someone who proves that you can have multiple interests and excel in all of them. She got an early start at the age of 6, helping her mother with the Beatles fan club. Her singing career included tours of Europe and Russia. Ruth is a songwriter with songs featured in numerous films and has released albums in 12 countries. She provides consulting and production services to Fortune 100, high-tech, and entertainment companies. Ruth consults on new media strategies, technology, database management, and marketing. She holds the titles of CEO of McCartney Multimedia, co-founder of fan management software company iFans.com, and president of Connect Code, a QR technology and marketing software. Please join me in welcoming the digital diva and media entrepreneur, Ruth McCartney.
So, as Caitlin was saying, you're probably sitting here wondering, why on earth are we listening to a 52-year-old ex-wannabe Madonna pop star? Well, I'm not going to do the splits. I might do one of those, but, no, I don't think we have that kind of insurance. But as you probably know, any business, the music industry, is just like any business. You need customers, you need a fan base, you need marketing, and you need all of the above. So I was born in Liverpool in the 1960s and grew up in a family of, well, that's me being swung around by Jane Asher and Paul and his speed. What was he thinking? Speedos, good heavens. And there we are in the Bahamas at the filming of Help, the old Beatles film. So, and there I am at 8 years old with my mum and dear departed dad and his left-handedness. And you can tell he's left-handed. He's even smoking a cigarette with his left hand. But obviously, I grew up like any child, wanting the greatest bicycle and the latest and greatest. Oh, I don't know, dealy bobbers I think we had in those days, and, platform-soled shoes and so on. So we used to get these huge sacks and sacks of mail that would come to our house in Liverpool. And the poor postman, I think he had a hernia by the time I was about 7, because he would drag all of this mail and he would dump it in the front. And they had 2 deliveries in those days, so we'd get the morning sacks of mail and then the afternoon sacks of mail. And the poor guy would come in and have a cup of tea and relax and so on. And so we got so much stuff that my mum, Angie, said, well, we really need to organize this. She's the consummate secretary still. At the age of 82, she runs McCartney Multimedia's human resources, accounts receivable, accounts payable, and petty cash tin. And at 52 years old, every morning I get a printed out Google map, $2 parking money, and a Swiss Army knife, and she tells me where I'm going, So, and I'm not kidding. He's nodding, it's true. And so we decided to organize all of this stuff into what then became ultimately the Beatles fan club. And we'd get all kinds of things from all over the world that just literally said, Paul, Liverpool. And they'd be mailed in Japan or Mexico or wherever they would be. And so the US Post Office did a fantastic job of, figuring out, oh, Paul, Liverpool, oh yeah, that guy. And they all arrived in the burlap sacks at our house. And so we started out with this huge dining table that was about the size of this stage. And so we got all these shoe boxes and, canvas boxes. And my mother said, okay, well, we're going to have a filing system. Because if you're going to build a brand and you're going to build a customer base, you need a system. You need a filing system. And so we had all the letters that came in from Australia and New Zealand went down under the dining table. And all of the ones that came in from China and Japan and whatever went in the bay window, because that faced east. So we had our own little geographical system. It was a great way for a 6-year-old to learn geography and filing all at the same time. And so after a while, we got so many of these things, and we used to reply to every single one. We had I'll never forget, we had on the credenza in the dining room, we had one of those old Roneo machines, which used to have to paint ink onto the drum. And my pocket money was earned by my cousin, Kate, would feed the paper in, and I'd Roneo off the letters, and they'd come out the other end, and my mother would stuff them in an envelope, and out they'd go. It was like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory for fan clubs. And after a while, my brother would come home at the weekends, and he'd say, hey, Ange, how's it going? I've invited 23 people over for a roast leg of lamb lunch on Sunday. And she'd be like, clear the dining room, fan club, has to go in the corner. So he said, well, what's all this fan mail about? And she said, well, you have to know. Everywhere you go, people are screaming their heads off. You have to know. And so ultimately, they decided to turn themselves into a brand called Apple. Not the Apple we all have in our pockets, but the other Apple. And so they got this great brand recognition, and they started to build the Beatles as a brand and Apple as a brand, and then all of the labels and so on. Now, this is kind of slightly off the track. However, building a brand is about not just recognition and repetition and top of mind, but it can sometimes also be about something completely crazy and out of the box. So, the big fashion brand Prada, Miuccia Prada gave permission to 2 crazy artists, Elmgren and Dragset, to build this installation in Marfa, Texas. As you can see, the population's 2,000 people. Well, why would they build a shop that would never open? And why would they fill it full of actual real Prada goods? Well, it's gone into the myths and legends and annals of branding history. It has its own Wikipedia page. And now, if you go, this is an older picture that we took on a trip through Texas, but they've constructed a little plinth around the outside of it, and people literally from all over the world have left business cards in front of this sort of shrine to nothingness, I suppose you'd call it, and shoes. But again, it's about nowadays, with the way we've all come to know branding and marketing and recognition and being a fan of a brand or following somebody, it's not always a bad thing to have something completely crazy that is really deliberate and provoked collision of, well, the brand and why. So that's what the Beatles really did when they were, the mop tops, and they decided to buy a building on Savile Row in London, which was the very Tony area where you had your suits and your shirts made, and then paint the building all psychedelic and build a label called Apple. They were really doing in the forefront back 40-odd years ago what people like Miuccia and Prada have now come, and it's called an art installation. In those days, it was just called mental, but that's the way we've now come to realize how you can stretch a brand and the communication with people. So a couple of years ago, Avnet, which is a big technology company, they do massive amounts of hosting on behalf of HP and NetApp and so on. They came to us and they said, well, we really want to brand ourselves separately from all of the big server companies and the hosting companies. How, as a little agency, would you do that? Well, having just worked 3 years with the lovely Mr. John Cleese of Monty Python fame, we kind of had that terribly British butler thing on our minds. And we hired this lovely actor called Alan Selker to play the part, and we created a character for a really stoic, old Fortune 100 company, we created this character called Nigel the Data Butler. We created YouTube videos. We really just took it kind of outside of the box. We leveraged all of this international social media. And so the point of this was trying to find people who are going to be, we call it word of mouse. Not word of mouth, but word of mouse. Who are the evangelists in your business or in your brand or in your vertical? In the case of Avnet, it was all of the people working in IT. All of the people working in IT are overworked, underpaid, stressed, somebody's telephone's broken, the printer doesn't connect, I need an Ethernet cable on floor 46. So we thought, what if we give them something to giggle about? What if we give them something to laugh at that's going to go viral in the basement with the Dilberts of the world? And it was a great success. I mean, you know, people think about, okay, great, Nigel the Data Butler, what's all that about? And then we stretched it even further. Everybody was talking about, and still is, Wikipedia. So we actually bought nigelpedia.com, and we created a fake page to just look like Wikipedia, but we called it Nigelpedia. And we created a story around this character who doesn't exist, but Nigel, Tristan, Damien, Crispin, Chatterley, Smedley, Butler. And you'll laugh because Alan Selker, this lawyer, he's actually from Horsforth in Leeds, believe it or not. And Nigelpedia is no known relation to any pedia in the known world, as yet, cheerio, chin chin, and toodle pip. So you can have fun with your brand in a very, you know, politically correct and PG sort of way. And sometimes, you know, humor and thinking out of the box is really the best way to stretch a marketing budget. This wasn't too terribly expensive at all, but we had a lot of fun with it. It got written up in all the industry newspapers, and it was really a great success for them. So now, great, in this day and age, of course, Avnet knows who their IT customers are. They have databases. They have ways to interact with people. But flashing back to my Auntie Ginny's living room, yuck, what was with those curtains? I still don't get that. But anyway, so the boys would come home, and this is a typical, hey, could you please answer some of this fan mail? And they would answer them, but not everybody put a return address on the letter. So they were anonymous. And Paul and John especially always used to say to my mom, hey, Ange, you know, it's nice that you're making us write all this fan mail, but who are all these people? So, you know, it's great that they're, and John always used to call them the customers. He never ever used the word fans. And if I learned one thing apart from riding a bicycle from my uncle John Lennon, it was that no matter whether you call them fans, customers, clients, patients, students, whatever, the end of the relationship is still that, you know, they're customers. And so eventually we devised a way to figure out who all these people were. And that then leads us to this day and age of conversion. So this is another one of our clients. He is the breakout star from High School Musical 1, 2, and 3. Fabulous kid. Wants to get past the whole Disney branding, because once he gets out of Mauschwitz, he wants to have his own career. Oh, sorry, did I say that? Live on the internet and everything? Go ahead, Walt. Get me. So what we've now been able to do with various technologies, this one is one of ours, but is conversion. With Facebook and social media and Twitter and all of the noise about all of this stuff, you can have all the thumbs up you want, you can have all the likes, and you can have followers, whatever. But unless you actually know who these people are and how to get at them and, frankly, how to sell them something, you're a legend in your own lunchtime. You can be as huge as you want to be, but unless you can convert that into actual ROI dollars, hello, I'm speaking at a financial-based school, what's the point? So there are certain kinds of Facebook pages, and what we've done is we've brought marketing in. We've embedded a sign-up page so we can convert people into a customer database for this client of ours by using sign up. Now, why should they sign up? Okay, we incentivize them. So every couple of weeks we say, hey, the 12th person to sign up next hour will win, you know, X, Y, and Z, and so on and so forth. So conversion is just as important as PR. PR is very important and it's great, but unless you find a way to actually capture those people, find out where they live, work, and play, and more importantly, their cell phone number and their date of birth and their credit card number, it's all kind of, you know, kind of a wasted exercise unless you can do that. And now what technology allows us to do today, of course, is tracking. Now, if you have a friend page on Facebook, you're only ever going to get friends and thumbs, and when you get to 5,000, they will cut you off. My mother, Angie, at 82, she's at 4,800 and something friends on Facebook, and she's starting to panic about, well, what are they going to do when I get to 5,000? Well, mother, we'll get you a fan page, and then you can go and get likes, and then with that, you get all of these analytics. Facebook is very smart. If any of you are ever invited to buy shares, and I have no reason to say this, I don't own any, I'm not vested, I don't know the Winklevi, I don't know any of those people. Well, that is the plural for Winklevoss, isn't it? I think Facebook is going to kick some major butt over and above Google, because from day one, they have opted us all in to tell us what we like. Oh, I like the riverfront in Richmond. I like vegetarian food. I like skydiving. They know so much more about us as a collective and individual group than Google ever managed to collect with YouTube account data or Gmail data. So now with Facebook, if you have a business or a fan page, you can get all kinds. This is just one screen. I didn't want to bore you with thousands of them. But you can see daily active users, weekly, up, down, there's demographics, there's geographics, there's targeted information, there's males versus females, there's age groups, and so on. And this is why Facebook sponsored ads on the right-hand side when you log onto Facebook, they're really taking a chunk out of search advertising. So Bing, Google, and so on, they've come in about 10% cheaper than those ad rates. And they can target, literally, I can log into our agency Facebook account and say, show me all the 28-year-old left-handed banjo players living in Nashville who support the Predators. And it literally will give me a list and say there are 27 of those people, and it will cost you 5 cents a click to advertise to them. So we've really gone a long way from John Lennon lying on my Auntie Ginny's carpet going, who are all these people, to here we are now. And it's really, it's not that long of a period of time. Now, once you've converted those people into names and addresses and being able to send out emails and newsletters and broadsheets, white papers, whatever you want to call them, this is one of our technologies. And so now we can tell you how many emails sent, how many failed, how many delivered, the percentage, the opens, and then even who clicked on what. One of our technologies we use to send out Remax email blasts to their 88,000 agents. And literally in real time, as the email goes out, we can see, let's say that third link there, it'll give us a list of the first and the last name of the person who just clicked on it. And we refer back to the database, and we can pick up the phone in real time and say, hey, did you get our email? Because you don't really want to pick up the phone and go, hello, Fernando Verdaguer. I can see you're looking at page 4 of our website right now. Kind of freaks people out. So you're like, hey, we did it last week. Hello, we're just conducting a task. Did you get the recent Remax blast? And I can see in my machine that this guy is clicking from page to page. He's like, no, I never got it. I'm like, okay, strike you off my list because I know what you're made of. So, this is all the kind of information that's available out there. ECRM, for those of you who are not in the marketing business, is electronic customer relationship management. We just like to call it email newsletters, but there's an acronym for everything in every business. But it's an amazing thing how passively you're able to collect huge amounts of data. Now, this also applies to audio and video. This is our music player. So if a band joins iFans, they can upload their music and we'll host it for free. But in exchange, what they get access to and what we also get access to, because we keep all of our bands by genre, by jazz or rock and roll or whatever it is. So we can see that each one of those songs, there's 4 of them on here, we can see the plays today, the number of plays overall, and then we can drill down and we can see literally by a connection with Google Maps where in the world each song is being played on what date, how many times, in which zip code. Well, now, things like that, if you're a politician and you're giving speeches, in fact, somebody running in Arizona used this system to internet broadcast some of his political speeches. And so he was then able to log in here and say, wow, when I go to the north part of the state, I should be talking about retirement benefits. When I go to the south part of the state and get on the stump, I should be talking about immigration and the border and so on, because he was literally able to measure each one of his 4 speeches using pins and a map. We can do the same with video. We can broadcast TV commercials long after a big company's run out of money to buy TV space and media space. You put them on the internet, and you can literally measure day by day, minute by minute, where people are responding to which particular piece of your media. Why is that important? Well, if you're planning an in-store, if you're an author, or if you're planning a political campaign, literally anything where you're going to go live in front of people, by doing a campaign like this 6 or 8 weeks prior, you can really take the temperature and get there and look like a genius, frankly. So, you know, nobody knows by listening to a speech or a song or watching a video that tacitly in the back end, they're actually voting, hey, I was here at this GPS coordinate and I watched this for this many minutes. We don't collect personal data. It's not, you know, creepy, scary or anything like that. But this is the most passive listening is really, you know, the greatest thing I think that the internet's able to deliver. And it's actually not that difficult. It's just like FedEx. We send a file to somewhere. We know where we sent it. We stick a pin in a map. We return the data. It's not that complicated. So the social interaction history. Now I'm talking about, you know, people gathering data and people passively giving data. You know, for years and years and years, all the way back to the, I love this graphic, you know, the caveman. We started out like this, and now we're actually still sitting like this in front of a laptop. So, you know, we learned to walk upright, and then they made iPads, and we're all back like this. But people feel safe in groups. You know, it's that whole safety in numbers and tribes, and I belong to the Rotary Club, or I support a certain soccer team, or whatever it is. And that's why places like Facebook, you know, I have a theory about Facebook. If you're having a good day, you want to post a photograph and show off, hey, look at me, I just won a gold medal in the downhill slalom or whatever. If you're having a bad day, you want to log on, and it's kind of like a digital Cheers, where everybody knows your name. You know, everybody loves you. You go into Facebook and you're like, well, I'm having a bad day. Oh, they're there. And people send you virtual bunnies and hugs and all this other nonsense. But that speaks to that we all actually want to belong to something, no matter how small or large of a group. And that's kind of the emotional need that this social media takes care of, because you want to think you're cool, and you want to hang out with your friends and, you know, all give each other a big thumbs up. So that's all great, but now, you know, it only takes a click. In the old days, we used to have town hall meetings and village meetings and wonderful actual one-on-one events like tonight, but they're becoming so few and far between, because people now, one of the questions in our roundtable was, well, you know, people are just clicking, and the millennial generation lives right here. But I really feel like there's a resurgence. I think it's flipping around. I really think that we all are going to need more than a virtual hug. We're actually going to need a neighbor with a real bowl of chicken soup when the nor'easter hits, you know? So listening to your audience as a business is important. And if that audience starts to say, well, you know, we like to have a town hall meeting or a group meeting, or we like to have our interaction and our say, this technology nowadays lets you do that. And also, once you've listened to your audience, you can go back and readjust your message as many times as you want. You know, if you put out a press release and you get back, well, okay, Bank of America, we're going to do a $5 ATM fee, right? Not happening now, is it? So readjusting your message is a really, really big part of the whole thing. And it's also green. If you look at how far we've come from, you know, the old days when my father, who was born in 1902, used to work in a black and white silent movie theater in Liverpool, and they had the programs that they'd sell for a penny. And God bless him, he would go around and somebody would buy the program, and if they'd throw it on the floor, he'd pick all the ones up that he'd already sold for a penny, get on his bike, pedal home, iron them, and go and sell them again for a penny. Well, so, you know, he figured out how to be green back in the 1914s by recycling. Well, information is the same. You know, you can have You can do regular blog and wall posts a lot more efficiently and in a timely manner and in a greener manner than you can sending out. I'm not saying go away from print, because print is very important, but this is a great way, if you're not doing social media and you're not using EPR, this now is really the time to do that. You can put an audio or a radio channel, podcasts, on your website. You can upload a podcast to iTunes, where the world comes to listen for information. You can create videos and put them on YouTube as part of your corporate strategy of communications. There are little groups like Ning, where you can create communities and so on. LinkedIn is another great way within the business world. It's the business side of Facebook and social networking, but it's because we all want to belong. At the end of the day, we all want to feel like we're part of something. We're working with mycircles.com, which is launching soon, which is a really interesting concept of, it's the antithesis of Facebook with Facebook features. So if you don't want all of the babble and all of the noise of knowing that you're hanging out basically in the 7th largest country in the world, if Facebook were a country, it would be the 7th largest country in the world. Wow. So, again, people are coming up with alternatives to that, like MyCircles and so on. And then we have the mobile-based web. Okay, so that's kind of crazy exploding between, Androids, iPhones, Blackberries, iPads, tablets, and so on and so forth. And the mobile web is a really very, very different animal from the web. We've kind of come to know, we're trying to force the internet to work on mobile devices, but that's what that slide means. It's the World Wide Web, right? For I don't know how many of you are in graphics or whatever, but the web is generally supposed to be 800 pixels wide or greater. Well, along come these little things called, iPhones and Blackberries, and they face generally this way. They don't play Flash. They love to run on Java, and they love to be able to flip this way and that way. So if you have a job or a boss or a company or a startup or whatever, and you haven't got a mobile web strategy and budget, now is the time, because honestly, most people spend 5 times more time on their mobile devices than they do actually on their desktop looking at the World Wide Web. So the ratio of minutes usage on mobile to web is now 5 to 1. So it's really quite exponential. Which brings me to another crazy concept that we're working on. So everybody knows what this is, right? It's a barcode. You go to any supermarket, anything you buy, and it's scanned, and it brings up a price and a unit number, and it talks to the inventory, and off you go. Well, now, in 1994, the Denso Wave Corporation in Japan, they were OEMing, which is original equipment manufacturers, for auto parts. So they were shipping cars, for example, a Toyota, and it would have a Bose radio in it, and Recaro speakers, and carpet made by one company, and doors made by, door interiors made by another company. And there just wasn't enough information able to be stored in the barcode for shipping it. So a genius engineer at the Denso Wave Corporation said, well, what happens if we just stack one on top of the other, and it's sort of a multiple of 4, and so we can store all that information. So it became known as the QR for quick response code. And you've probably seen these little things cropping up in magazines and advertising and stuff all over the place. So nowadays, QR is quick response, but you can see that all of the kind of companies that are using these to add a much longer tail and a conversation and a relationship with their fans, customers, students, patients, whatever you want to call them. So you can also get fairly artistic with them. Obviously, you can see Mercedes has made them diamond shapes. You can't do too much messing about with them, otherwise the mobile phone won't be able to scan them. But you can see all kinds of brands have had all kinds of fun. And they can link to videos, they can link to sweepstakes, they can link to sign-up forms, they can link to anything, as long as they are mobile optimized. Because if you link them just to a plain old website, it's kind of missing the point. So the strategy on the mobile web. Now, along came the World Wide Web. We started our business in Nashville in '94. And people were like, well, what's a homepage? What's a website? Like, no, it's a website with a T. But nobody knew. And I literally used to have customers kicking and screaming, trust me, you need a website, you need a domain name, you need a www. And they looked at me like I just landed from Mars. And I get that a lot. But so we talked them into it. Well, now any business knows that you need a web presence of some description. And the same is now becoming true of the mobile web. It's yet another place that, I like to say the mobile web is kind of like a raffle ticket. You have to be present to win. If you're not there and your competitor has something that's going to be workable on someone's iPhone or their iPad or whatever it is, well, then they're probably going to take the business. So with Eastern Sports, they make Riddell helmets for the NFL and so on. So we just created a whole dialogue which takes their young fans, they're in the Walmart chain, they can scan that, they can get a free ringtone, they can watch videos of hockey, they can watch all kinds of stuff, but only after they've given Eastern, through our eCRM system, their name, address, city, state, zip, birthday, and mobile phone number. See how that works? So if you incentivize things, and you always got to go look where people live, work, and play, if your target demographic is anywhere from 14 to 45, good chance they'll have a smartphone, they'll use it, they'll know how to use it, and they'll be looking for incentives. Of course, people aren't just going to go scan these things just for fun, but if you make it clear in your advertising, scan me now and get X, Y, and Z, then that's a great way. Even if somebody walks into a Walmart, sees a hockey stick, doesn't buy it, boom, they can scan it and they can join your fan club and join the conversation. So if you didn't get them this time, you might get them next time. The same thing is true of real estate. You know, up in the northern states and up in Canada, especially this past season in the winter, selling houses is really tough. I mean, it's a tough economy, it's tough anyway. And people are, you know, they're wandering around and they're looking at open houses, notifications and so on. And so we came up with the way to literally put a mobile open house in the palm of somebody's hand. And if you print the code big enough on the sign and the weather's cold, the prospect doesn't even have to get out their car. They can pull up and they go, ding, scan it. Oh, great, call the realtor. So it really is, I know going mobile, I sound like a broken record, but it really is going, and people expect the convenience of all of these things, and they can save them as a little applet, and they can always go back and visit them later. That led us to the next challenge in this economy. Of course, there are so many nonprofits out there that are just having a really, really hard time. I mean, you think business is doing bad. Imagine, you know, running a charity because, you know, people are changing their budgets and so on. So the next wave of mobile, of giving is mobile. You've seen, you know, when the terrible Haiti earthquake happened, they had text to donate, you know, 515151. The limitations with that, of course, is first of all, there's a cost to send a text message on some data plans, and you could only donate $10. It was fixed. Well, what if you only had $7.83? Or what if you wanted to donate $100? You'd have to send the same text 10 times over. Not likely that you're going to do that. So with this new technology, the flexibility is there. If a kid wants to have a lemonade stand fundraiser and they raise $312.42 and that's what they want to donate to the charity, boom, they scan it and that's the number they put in. So there are really lots of ways with this new mobile technology. The sky is the limit. Anything you can think of to continue to develop an audience, the relationship, and so on and so forth, that's really there. Connecting on the mobile, and again, back to data. If you're the owner of one of these Connect codes, well, then you can log in and you can see which date, how many, where, the views on such and such a date, and the demographics and so on. Because it really is all about measurement, and it's all about knowing who your customers are, where they are, and where they live. So, the Google Public Data Project is interesting. They have opened a tunnel where anybody in this room, anybody in the world, if you have reliable data of any kind in, you know, like an Excel spreadsheet, you can upload, for example, this is the fertility rate of countries, and this is the life expectancy of various countries. So they take in data from all over the world, and it's open source, and it's real time, and it's live, and you can go there and do market research, you can research papers, you can do all kinds of research, and it's free, and it's all out there. So not to hop on too much about the data thing. Well, there's another one. So that's the current status of worldwide unemployment by country. That South Africa looks, like they're obviously in some more trouble than Australia is. So you can drill down on these kind of things, especially with the international focus that Robbins has here. If you're looking at student exchanging or working abroad or having somebody abroad come into your circle and into your situation, there's so many great ways now with all of this marketing technology available and the data to learn so much more before you leave home, and be able to come up with international solutions. So it's really, really all over the place. So American Express, I mean, a huge behemoth company like American Express, they've recognized, they've built their own platform to track American Express small business, so that they can tell you how you're doing on Yelp and Twitter and Bing and Facebook and all of these other things. And American Express isn't in the business of spending millions of dollars just for fun. So the message here, of course, is that this stuff is not going anywhere anytime soon. And if you don't have a strategy and you don't have a plan, no time like the present. So. Wells Fargo is an interesting one. Again, I sort of looked at these case studies on a financial basis. So Wells Fargo became the first financial institution to adopt social media when it launched in 2006. We think that's 6.5 years ago. That's quite a long time ago. They used Twitter. They had something called Stagecoach Island, which was really interesting. It was a CD-ROM or DVD game to teach young people, children especially, the value of social interaction and financial reward. So it was kind of like Monopoly, but digital, and you could play it. And of course, it was very soft branded, Wells Fargo here, Wells Fargo there. But as you went around Stagecoach Island and made points and built houses and bought a marina and so on, it was all brought to you by Wells Fargo, of course. But they really had a great digital team from day one who understood, again, that the future of commerce is where people live, work, and play. Whether if they're AARP members, great, it's probably the web and it's probably print. But if they are tweens, teens, millennials, and even older, it's probably the mobile web and certainly the social media. So how many of you guys work for, I see a bunch of student-looking faces here. How many of you guys work for outside companies who are not students? Okay. Do you happen to know how many of your companies have a social media policy in place to tell you, okay, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, not there, 6, any takers in the back? Going, gone. But not many, from all the people that raised hands. And now the interesting thing is, if you are a big employer, if you're a Fortune 100 company, how do you manage that? How do you say to people, if you say, I'm employed by Pfizer, and you've got a bunch of silly pictures of you in goofy hats in Mexico drinking margaritas at 9 in the morning on your Facebook page, how does that reconcile with your job title? So it's a really interesting thing. And one of the things that Wells Fargo has a big corporate policy in place, but they still also like to have fun. So they had a flash mob in Times Square. They took all the people from Stomp, and literally hundreds of people at the end of this performance gathered around during lunchtime like, oh, this is so much fun, what's this? Well, it was brought to you by Wells Fargo. So again, they're bridging the gap between the social media, the digital world, and the actual real-time interaction with their customers, which I think is a really quite a clever way of doing it. Chase is using nonprofit, using Facebook and social media in a very nonprofit focused way, which is kind of interesting. They have 3.5 million people, and what they let their users do on Facebook is nominate charities that Chase should give, the Chase Foundation should give their huge endowments to. And so again, by listening to their audience, readjusting their message, and helping nonprofits, they're creating this absolutely great sort of branding message that it's hard to come by nowadays. And the old days of like when I would go and see the Beatles as a child in, I don't know, Manchester or somewhere, and they'd say, oh well, we're going to have a meet and greet for the fan club secretary and the mayor's daughter and this, that, and the other. That created so much goodwill. And when you're a pop star, that's easy to do because you have a backstage party and, okay, fabulous, and you tell all your best, you know, Jimi Hendrix stories or whatever it is you like to do. But when you're Chase Bank, you know, how do you do that? That's a really difficult thing to do. And so what they're using social media for is Chase Giving. And they let people, it's kind of the American Idol of charity giving, right? So they let people decide. And so the people then feel like, okay, well, Chase Bank's listening to me. You know, I might need to open a new checking account. They've got plenty of banks to pick from. But Chase then has managed to stay top of mind, even prior to somebody being a customer. B of A are using it for a help desk. They're using social media to be able to reach out and listen to problems before they crop up, fix things before they become a real issue. They learned their lesson the hard way because of, again, they were going to implement the $5 ATM use fee for current customers, including myself. And so it was repealed. But they've learned to listen. So a big brand, you know, you really need to be agile. If you have a big ad agency that isn't agile and the whole concept is like trying to turn around an aircraft carrier, listen to the people inside your company. Listen to, you know, small consultants, small agencies, because oftentimes it's really hard to keep your finger on the pulse of who you are. And we see this a lot in Hollywood. You know, we deal with a lot of great celebrities, but we deal with a lot of people who, they really believe their own PR. They think, oh my gosh, you know, I was on the red carpet last night, therefore I am X. Well, you know, that happens to big brands too, and sometimes, you know, you have to talk people down and you have to just tell them, you know, you're fabulous, but not so much today. And so social media is a really great way for all kinds of brands and companies to be able to take the temperature of the audience. And there's, you know, B of A's little team, they've personalized it, and then they're, you know, they're literally tweeting around the clock with customers and putting out potential fires, which is a great way to do it. So now, okay, to tweet or not to tweet. We haven't really talked about Twitter. How many of you are on Twitter? Okay, good group. Excellent. And how many of you tweet every day? Slightly less. Right now, nice. Love her. Make me look thin. Twit pic. How many of you tweet like more than once a week? Okay, so that's kind of a decent average. How many of you think you're so fabulous that you tweet just going to the restroom? No one ever admits to that. I don't get it. Okay, so to tweet or not to tweet? Well, if you're a personal person and you're running a work group or you've got friends or that, whatever, that's great. But, you know, it really is about strategy. Twitter is great. I mean, it's literally saved lives of friends of ours. I was in a coffee shop in Manhattan Beach in California, and I happened to see on the news that there was a tornado coming through just south of Nashville, where I know our friends Rob and Sally go on a bike ride every Saturday with their twin daughters. And I managed to tweet him, and he follows me on his cell phone, and he said, oh, God, thank goodness, because we got back in the car and got into an underground garage literally as it passed over. So, you know, people who say, Twitter, it's nonsense, depends on what it's for. Look at the Arab Spring. Look at the political difference that Twitter made in this whole, you know, everything from Libya to Egypt to Iran. So depending upon what you use Twitter for, what your stance in life is, where your brand is, where if you are employed by a bigger company, do they tweet? Do you fit into that? So it's a question that, you know, every time I tweet, I ask myself, does anybody really care about what I'm about to say? Because, you know, again, you don't want to be the boy or the girl who cried wolf. Every time somebody says, tweet, 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 okay, to me, from a corporate level, you can somewhat devalue your brand. So always think about, you know, to tweet or not to tweet. That is the question. And then also, there are so many different choices from, you know, in Russia, there's Orkut is huge. Odnoklassniki is huge. China has its own version of Facebook. So again, if you have an international perspective, and you're looking at doing business or, you know, interacting with people, always also look, you know, look at their culture, and look at the world they live in, and take an outside look at some of the, you know, Facebook is definitely the behemoth, but there are hundreds of others out there, and we can learn a lot from all of this. So the question is, you know, what's next? We've talked about mobile, we've talked about iPads, we've got Asimo the robot and Roomba robots doing our vacuuming and stuff for us. Without a doubt, I mean, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, they're not going anywhere. That's just part of the social fabric of our digital culture nowadays. My circles we talked about. But, you know, the next gen Web 3.0 it's a force for good, and it's a force for communication and giving and all of those things. But I think it's really important as human beings never to forget to just sometimes just, you know, switch off, get back to you, make soup for your neighbors, or walk somebody's dog, take some time for yourself. We're all living and branded with so many images and stuff every single day that even, you know, flashback to 1964 when the Beatles would come home from tour and put their suitcases down, living in this whole crazy, crazy world, which was, you know, paying their rent and making them rich. Even they, in the height of the 60s, even they never forgot to take time to, you know, put their feet up, have a cup of tea, and just unplug from the world. So no matter how desperate you think somebody needs a reply or how fast or what have you, just, you know, breathe, live, think about it. They're not going to die if you don't tweet them right back. So this brings me to, again, garbage in, garbage out. If you put rubbish on your Facebook page, or you've got friends who are really just acting silly, you might want to think twice about being friends with them, because, as we know, a lot of the big corporations now, if you're in the job hunt, if you're in the job-seeking world, big companies like Southwest Airlines have just created 400 jobs in Phoenix for people to do nothing but search social media for prospective employees. They're doing digital background checks. So, you know, imagine you just applied for a job as a pilot, and there's a picture of you, you know, on a donkey in Tijuana with a bottle of Jose Cuervo. Not so much on the resume, right? So think about if you put garbage out there, and, you know, garbage into your profile, that's what people are going to read for you, your brand, and your friends, and so on. And good data, again, it makes for good decisions. If you have a strategy in place and you can figure out who your people are, where they are, what they like, and give them more of it, well, then you'll make more money. Location, location, location. Again, do you need a destination website? Do you need a Facebook page? Do you need both? Do you only need a Twitter feed? You know, it's really up to you. And you get what you pay for. Sometimes people have I'll just, you know, throw up one of those free website overnight things and whatever, which may work for your business. It may not. You may need a bit more strategy than that. And be sure your sins will find you out. A friend of ours recently was in a slip and fall case. He was a photographer, and he was on a gig, and somebody moved his camera gear down what he thought was a step. And it was actually a drop, like about this off the front of the stage. Fell, broke both ankles, had to have 2 surgeries, wanted the location to pay his 20% deductible, and they didn't, and they wouldn't. So it wound up in a lawsuit, and he went to his deposition, and again, there was a credenza about as wide as this, full of pieces of paper. And the lawyers in the case said to him, "This is a picture of you from Facebook. What do you hold? What's in that glass?" And he kept, "Liquid." It was beer. "Well, this is a picture of you from MySpace. Well, what's in that glass?" "Liquid." It was red wine. So in the end, he literally had to settle out of court for less than his surgery costs were, because be sure your sins will find you out. So I don't want to scare anybody to death, but if you've got anything out there that you think may be questionable, whip home tonight and delete it. But don't forget, it'll still be in the Wayback Machine. It's not going anywhere. So I believe, yes, that is our last slide. So do we have any questions? Absolutely. Question time. Yes, ma'am. Do you mind this? I'm going to grab some water.
Thank you. My name's Alex Sanford. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the ethics of the electronic customer relationship management and how far you think is too far in terms of the data companies can collect on people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in our particular case with our clients that use our system, we'll collect any data that anybody voluntarily wants to give us, name, address, city, state, zip, polls and all of those things. But that data in our particular agency, that data belongs 100% to our client. We don't access that list. We never sell it to a third party. We won't rent it or whatever. 2 reasons. One, I just think it's dodgy in general. And secondly, if that list gets out and you start all of a sudden, you can create a Gmail account and you've only ever used that Gmail account to sign up for that newsletter. And all of a sudden you start getting spam to that account from all kinds of other people. It destroys that brand. You really don't have any faith in the fact that they care about you as a customer, that they care about your privacy, that any of that stuff. I see it a lot. I see people who get greedy and they're like, oh, I can sell this list for 12 cents a name. And we always say to them, well, be our guest. We don't want to represent you anymore because you're going to do $120 worth of damage per name because they're going to say, oh, they sold me down the river. So again, you have to be careful about any data that you put out there in the public arena. Somebody somewhere is probably going to write to you or use it. But I, for one, our personal credo at McCartney is that, a fan belongs to a band or a customer belongs to a brand, and that's where the relationship should end.
Hi. When you talked about social media with the 2 banks, Wells Fargo and Chase, it seemed like they were doing very different things. Chase was using Facebook to give charitably, whereas Wells Fargo was kind of putting on promotions brought you by Wells Fargo. I was wondering if you had any data that showed whether one worked more effectively than the other, or they both worked about the same, or if you could just expand on that a little more.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'm not privy to the actual data, but I mean, obviously with Chase's particular case and the giving, they're going to be much more measurable simply because they register people to register charities that turn into a database. With Wells Fargo, the purpose was much more of a PR, top of mind, branding, bringing people together in a physical space. So in each case, it worked perfectly for what they were trying to do. But again, this comes back to the question of strategy. Who is your audience? What is your message? Where does your audience live, work, and play? How old are they, and how do they like to be communicated with? So I think it was a success in both cases. I would say that Chase is probably more measurably successful because they have 3.5 million customers who are passionate about their charities, so they've involved a third layer, a third level. And the Wells Fargo piece was much more of an esoteric sort of art, art happening. But it certainly worked for both of them. They just came at it from different angles. So.
Would you discuss how many hours a day people are spending on social media? And I'm sure that's related to age.
Yes, I mean, I don't, off the top of my head, I don't have the actual, the minutes and the numbers. But yes, it absolutely is related to age. And there is a middle ground. Actually, once people who are plugged in, like my mother, who are 82, once people who, if they're older and they are plugged in, they have a little more of a, a flexible schedule than somebody running, a mother running kids to soccer practice and so on and so forth. But the major demographic is 14 to 19. And they are literally living, for example, my 2 cousins from Liverpool, they did a round the world trip. They came to visit us in LA, and they were flying home to London. And I said, gosh, you live in Lincoln, 120 miles from London. You land at 11 o'clock at night, the train stop. How are you going to get home? Oh, well, we'll just put it on Facebook that we need a ride. And I went, okay, well, you can use a landline to make an international call. Why don't you just call your mum and say, meet us in London at 11 o'clock? Oh, no, we'll just put it on Facebook. They'll figure it out. Somebody will pick us up. 4 of their friends drove 100 miles to pick them up. So it literally just, depends on they're using it like a message board. Like, remember old Lily Tomlin, one ringy dingy, connecting all the calls? Well, that's what kids are using Facebook for now. It's kind of like a switchboard. It's amazing. I mean, I'd rather just call the taxi myself.
I think we can do one more question. Who? Somebody?
Go on, make it interesting. Make it a John Lennon.
There we go. We got one.
Sorry. You mentioned using contests to drive likes on Facebook.
Yep.
And someone today had just discussed with me that there may be some changes in the rules, but that's not allowed just to solely like us to win X. Can you tell me anything you know about
Yeah,
it?
it depends on, well, the internet rules, and I'm not a lawyer, and I don't even play one on TV. It depends on the value of the prize, the state that you're running it in, and the age of the person eligible to win. So if it's a game of skill, there are no rules. If it's a sweepstakes and the prize is worth more than $5,000 and it involves the states of Arizona and Missouri, then you better go see a lawyer. If it involves somebody like us and win, you have to have, if it's a sweepstakes kind of thing, all 49 states and the Commonwealth of Virginia have a no purchase necessary to win rule. So it's always worth, and there are great sites like LegalZoom.com where you can avail yourself of good, honest legal advice for not fortunes. But it depends on a lot of things, and it depends on where the prize is being given and where it's being awarded. So like if it was win a trip to Las Vegas and you picked someone in Virginia, you have to make sure that if the prize winner is bringing a minor, that the minor is allowed to travel out of state and isn't under parental protection order. Why do I know these things? Because we've had pop stars in trouble. So, but very good question, and it's always worth checking what the legality is in your particular state.